Okay.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our language-themed Hangout on Air. We're going to get started now, and my name is Brooke Marchewka. I'm an Innovation Fellow in the Peace Corps Office of Innovation, and I've been managing your Duolingo program. And Bamba, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Okay, so my name is Bamba. Bamba Job exactly. I'm the language coordinator at Peace Corps Senegal. So I will be in charge of all your language training activities during your PST1 and your PST2 and trying to back up you through all the service.
Thank you.
So
And
okay.
Jessica, why don't you introduce yourself?
All right. Hi, guys. My name is Jessica Moore. I spoke to a few of you on the phone last week when we had the conference call. I am a third-year volunteer here. I'm your Peace Corps volunteer leader for the agroforestry sector, and I am a Pular speaker.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining us. So we're going to get started with just a little overview of Duolingo. As you guys know, I mean, you've been working on it, learning French for like 9 weeks now. So kudos to you for being so hardworking on Duolingo. And the reason why we're using it is because we're trying to understand how it can help invitees to, like you guys, to prepare your language skills even before you get to pre-service training in Senegal. So I'd actually like to give you just a quick tour of what our dashboard looks like. It's actually really interesting how it works. So here's my screen, and this is our Duolingo dashboard for your class. And as you can see, we pretty much just have a tally of everyone here where we can see how many XP you've earned, how many skills you've completed in the course and lessons, and how many days you've been active. So this is essentially a real-time view that we have to keep track of your practice and to see how much you've completed. And as we can see here, some of you are really close to completing the course, if not already completed it. So nice work, you guys. And as you know, we have one more week left in the program. And I emailed you guys earlier today, but essentially we're going to be working towards the same goal. So we'll have a group goal of 8,000 XP. I know you guys can do it. So please keep working towards that. And again, if you have any questions about really anything, you can email me at any time and just send me your questions. But you've been doing really well so far, so just keep up the hard work. And as you know, actually, I see that our desk officer, Kristen, has just joined. Hi, Kristen. If you wouldn't mind just putting your microphone on mute, it's right in the table on your screen above. Thank you. And so that's Duolingo for you. And actually, we're going to start opening up the live Q&A right now. So if you're on YouTube, if you hover over the screen, there's a little in the corner, it says join the conversation. So I'm going to welcome you guys to start posting your questions now. But now I'll pass it over to Jessica, and she's going to talk a little bit about her experiences with language learning in Senegal. And feel free to ask questions of any of us, and we'll pick them up as we go. But for now, over to Jessica.
All right, guys. So like I said when I did my introduction, I speak Pular, which is one of the 8 different possible languages that you guys will be learning when you come into the country. I speak the Fulakunda dialect of Pular. We teach 3 different dialects of the Pular language here in Senegal. It was the first language I ever learned and got to a conversational level in. So this has actually been really exciting for me. I came into the country speaking no French and really speaking no other second language. I studied Chinese in university for 2 years, but I never got to a real level of confidence in the language, not the way I have with Pular. So even if you're a new language learner, just know that it is definitely possible for everybody to do this. Pula is a really fun language to speak. All of the languages really are here. People are really enthusiastic when they see a foreigner who's able to speak their local language. They get really excited. You'll have people just want to just have conversations with you, stop you on the street, just want to talk to you and just be shocked that you understand their language and you're not speaking to them only in French. So there's been many funny stories. There's been ups and downs with the language learning. One of the more amusing ones that I had in my early language learning times is that a lot of the words, they can mean different things if you pronounce them a little bit different. So in Pular, the word for to speak with and the word for to sleep with are very similar. So I had a funny instance in that I was going around town saying, oh yeah, I was speaking with this person and speaking with this person, and I'm going to go speak to this person now. And toward the end, my LCF, which is our language trainers, which you guys will each be assigned a local Senegalese national who is a language trainer for you, informed me, just so you know, the way you're using that word isn't exactly accurate. So that was kind of an amusing story that, everyone laughed about and everyone was very forgiving and they knew what I meant. But you'll have a ton of hilarious stories that come out of the language learning here, and then you'll have great ones also. One of my favorite things to do when I first got to my village was whenever I would buy goods, I learned all of the numbers in Pular. A lot of times people, they learn their local language, but then they don't really focus on the numbers because everyone here knows the French number. So you can get by using, that cost 1000 francs or 700 francs. But if you learn the local numbers, which I really encourage everyone to do, people will be shocked that you're able to negotiate in those numbers, and you'll draw a crowd, you'll get a better price. So that was a really fun way for me to practice my language early on, was just negotiating prices for items loudly and in Pular, and people really enjoyed that. I guess if you guys have questions, I'd love to answer any of your guys' questions. But yeah, the language is a lot of fun here. It's really something you can get into. It's fun to learn these new languages, and people will really appreciate your effort in doing that. So.
Great, thanks, Jessica. So we have one question right now from Melinda. She's actually wondering if you can speak a little Pular to us.
So Johnny Miwawa Bui Sabu Miyajiti Pularam Kono Sialamdi Kam Dubi Didi to Bawo Miwawi Bui. So I just said right now I can't. Bomba's laughing, it looks like. I can't very much because I have forgotten a lot of my Pular. I now live in Dakar, where I've been for the last year, so I don't speak Pular on a daily basis anymore. But if you had asked me two years ago, I would have been able to speak lots to you. So.
Well, it sounds like you spoke pretty well, at least from my perspective, so thank you for that. We have another question for you. So in general, when you first arrived in Senegal, what did you find to be the most difficult thing about learning the language?
I guess the most difficult thing is that the languages here are unlike any language you've ever heard or spoken or tried to learn before. You try to learn French or German or something like that, and some of the words pop out. They're similar to English. You can kind of figure it out to some extent. The language is complete, so it really is just kind of stepping out from everything you know about language and really starting at the very basic baby level of I don't even know how to say hello to someone. So I think that was the most challenging, but it's also the most fun. Now I speak unusual language that when I get back to the States is going to be kind of fun to use.
Well, thank you, Jessica. We're going to continue taking questions. So if you guys would like to type them in, we're happy to answer them live. But now we'll shift over to Bamba, and he's going to tell you a little bit more about what you can expect when you get to PST, and he's also happy to answer questions too. So Bamba, Please tell us a little bit more.
Thank you, Brooke. So, Physical Language Senegal program is, as most of people said it, one of the best programs in the world. And we start the language program while guys are there in the US. We have already started with the Duolingo, and we'll be sending some survival Wolof so that people can have at least, you know, some Wolof. Wolof is the most spoken language in Senegal. Wherever you go to Senegal, you find the Wolof. So they will start it when they are there in the US. You know, they start with the survival. When they come to Senegal, the first thing that we do is we test them in French to see their French level. Although we are not teaching French in the PST1, you know, but we test them, and we test them in medical, in technical, through all those interviews, and then the programmers will assign them, the sectors, you know, the program managers will assign them languages. Now, for the language program in itself, the language teaching in itself, most of the language teaching happens in the CBT sites. The CBT sites are the community-based training sites. Because in our PST, there's two settings. One is the center setting, the other is the village setting. The village setting is what we call the CBT sites, this community-based training, where they will have the immersion in terms of language, the immersion in terms of culture, in terms of daily life. They go to their CBT sites per group of 4, 5, 3, depending, and they go with the LCF. The LCFs that they are assigned to is the language and cross-culture facilitator. As Jessica said it previously, that person will be in charge of their language training. You know, that person will not be their language trainer, but that person will be their language facilitator. You know, because most of the language training will be mainly based in the community that they are in. Apart from some minority languages that really we have problems to find a community for immersion. You know, through the PST, we have 10 weeks of PST. In the 10 weeks of PST, we have something like 145 hours of language, okay, of effective language teaching. After those hours of language teaching, we are expecting them to be able to be at a level. You know, there is a level that is expected for all the PCTs or to be able to swear in. You know, we teach in general something like 7 to 8 languages in the PST, but we do not teach French during our PST. You know, because we really think that French is not the language that you integrate with when you are in a small village. Although it is important for the people who are coming in a Francophone country to have at least a basic in French, in French, you know. But in terms of integration, really, we expect the people to be able to speak their local language, because most of them, they will be really serving in very small villages where sometimes you even have problems to see people who speak French. But when you go out of your site, there you may need French to speak with other people who are not speaking your local language, your dialects. You know, this is in short what we teach, what we do in the PST. And after the PST, when you go to your installation, 1 month after you've been installed in your permanent site, we have an activity that we call the language seminars. During the language seminars, we reinforce the language that you have, that you took when you were in the PST. That's the kind of reinforcement. We adapt the language also that you learned during your PST to the dialects that you will be doing there, you know. And in the PST, we have 2 language tests, one at week 4 or 5, and the other one at week 10. Yeah. And by the end of the last one, we are really expecting people to be at the level intermediate need. in the language that they are learning. And in general, most of the people they do it. We have a percentage of 80, 90 age, sometimes 95% of the people who really pass their language test. When you don't pass now your language test, it will just depends. It will be a group decision to see if you will be given a week of training, or if you will be put under contract, or if you'll be sent home. But most of the people really they do their language. Yes. In short, that is the language program in Senegal. If they have questions, I'm ready to answer.
Thank you so much, Bamba. We have a lot of questions for you about language training. So the first question is, could you clarify when trainees will find out which language they'll be using at site?
Okay. This PS in general is during the end of the first week. In general, by the end of the first week, they can find really the language that they will be learning for the 10 weeks and the language that they will be serving with. Because we have a day of interviews. We have medical interviews, we have technical interviews, we have language interviews. By the end of those interviews now, people, they gather all those information to assign sites. Now the language that they will be learning will depend on the sites that they will be assigned to. And that it is the programmers who choose the language, the site, and the language that go by, and they send us, the language team, the list, and we give them the language. But in general, it is by the end of the first week.
Great, thank you. We have another question from Warren. He's wondering if you would recommend, you mentioned that Wolof is very widely spoken in Senegal. Would you recommend learning it ahead of time, or would you recommend waiting until, as you mentioned, that end of that first week in PST to find out what language they'll be learning?
In general, we recommend people to take what we call the survival Wolof. It's part of the pre-arrival materials that we send to invitees. It's a set of dialogues that go with the scripts, and in that survival Wolof, you have sometimes the greetings, introductions, shopping, directions. They have 5 dialogues in the survival Wolofs. That can help you at least to be able to handle, the minimum conversation. When at least you can greet people, you can say who you are, you can say where you come from, but really do not put too much stress on that, because the language may change when you come, to the PST. But the survival Wolof will be sent as part of the pre-arrival materials that you guys will be taking.
Great, thank you. And now actually we have a question for Jessica. So we have a question of essentially what is it like to be working with language trainers and facilitators, and what advice do you have to take the most out of learning from them?
So the language facilitators are great. They receive a lot of training not just on how to teach the local languages, but they're also our cultural facilitators. So they also have a lot of training on how to work with Americans and help them to integrate culturally into Senegal, into the cultures that you guys are going to be joining. So I guess my only advice would be to just really take advantage of them. They're here to help you guys. So ask them every question that you can think of and work on building relationships with them as much as you can. Yeah, they're really great. All of the language and culture facilitators are really great, and they definitely, they want you guys to succeed. It makes them happy when we're successful. That's why they're here, is to help us with this.
Awesome. Thanks, Jessica. And then we have another question for Bamba. So could you talk a little bit more about what the methodology for learning a language is, or teaching a language. Specifically, Shannon is wondering if there will be a lot of written resources provided to help them learn, or will most of the languages be learned through homestays and immersion?
And we do our best really to touch all the language aptitudes. We all know that the language aptitudes are the speaking, the writing, listening, and reading. And they will be given, depending on the language, they will be given language manuals, they will be given grammar books, they will be given dictionaries. Not all the languages have, grammar books, but all the languages at least have language manuals, PCT's manual, Peace Corps trainees manuals. In those books, they have enough information really to go through the structures of the language, to go through the vocabulary. They have a technical glossary at the end of the books, But what we recommend really people is to put the emphasis on speaking and on listening. It means going towards the community, going towards the family, to build that relationship, to build that confidence, to build up their listening and their speaking. Because for me, apart from the newness of the language, the hardest part of learning a local language is really being able to get what people say, the listening. And that you cannot really do it by staying in class only. That you cannot only do it by having only written resources. Of course, we have many written resources, but what we recommend is really to spend as much as time as people can in the community, in their homestay family. That's why we're doing our best really to try to find villages where they can have immersion, or families where they can have immersion.
Great, thank you. That was a really good answer for that question. Now we have another question about the language tests. So Bamba, you mentioned there would be, I think, 2 language tests throughout PST. And an invitee is asking, how are the language tests conducted, and how, I guess, what is the criteria by which you determine if someone is at an intermediate level?
The language, Peace Corps is using, the active model, that's solely oral test, We call it the LPI, the language proficiency interviews. Through the interview, we try to see how well you can produce in the language. That's not an achievement test, but that's a proficiency test. So it goes from the novice level to the superior level. But in general, what we ask people to do is to be at the level intermediate mid. Few of them can go at least to advanced low. Some of them can go to advanced low, but most of the people, they go between intermediate mid and intermediate high. So it is solely an oral test. We have no written test during the PST. There's no written test because, as I said previously, the emphasis is not put on writing and reading. The emphasis is put on speaking. And our local languages are not written languages. They are recently written. They are mostly oral and they are mostly spoken. Okay. So that will be an oral test.
Great. Well, thank you for that answer. And it looks like we have covered most of the questions, although if anyone has a question, now would be the time to post it. So we'll give you a few seconds there. But if anyone doesn't have further questions, I'd like to just, again, extend a thank you to Jessica and to Bamba for joining us today. I know that they're very excited to meet you guys and to start working with you and start helping you learn a new language. So it doesn't look like we have further questions, but if you guys do think of more questions after the Hangout, you can feel free to email me or post them on the Facebook group. I know Jessica is on that group. So feel free to contact us if you think of anything else. But thank you, everyone, for joining us, and keep up the great work on Duolingo. And in general, just get excited. You guys are about to embark on the adventure of a lifetime in Senegal, and just get ready for it.
Thank you, everyone.
And we'll see you later. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Jessica.
Thanks.
Bye.